Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our second episode with Jenna Zark and Brian and Dina, her cousins. I'm Jeffrey Geisner for the Holocaust Remembrance Group and the Obligations of Memory podcast network. We're going to talk about, in this episode, our second episode, about growing up in your Jewish homes and the memories that you have, both good, bad, and traumatic, maybe. So I'm going to start with you, Jenna, again, and ask you how your growing up in your family's home was.
Well, everyone has influences. I think I had an amazing relationship with my father that was very special to me. He also had red hair, so I think we felt we were together in our family in a fun way. But since I can remember, he's always been the fun side of things. And I remember him coming home from work and dancing on his shoes, and he invited me to do, and he would sing Three Blind Mice and we'd dance around. We liked watching horror movies together. He loved watching World War II movies, which were not of great interest to me, but I did it because he wanted to do it. And I know World War II was a huge part of his life. He had grown up in a very poor family and missed his meals many times. He told me something about weighing barely 120 pounds when he was 19. And if it were not for President Roosevelt, who created the Civilian Conservation Corps, where he went to Idaho and he was doing conservation work, I don't know how he would have done. He had an older brother, Sam. So I actually had an Uncle Sam who worked at the Pentagon, which was fun. And I had cousins I hoped would be here today, but one particular very shy, and others were not able to be. But my childhood was filled with these characters, and my Uncle Harry, who was an extremely handsome man, who looked a lot like Peter O'Toole. And my dad had red hair. He wasn't quite as handsome as his brother, but he was fun and funny. And my father's two cousins, Archie and Cy, were comedians. One of them was he really was a comedian. He was quite funny. Growing up, I loved being with them. I mentioned my uncle's seders. My mother loved to entertain, so there were always a lot of people in the house on weekends. For whatever reason, my parents were not religiously inclined, but for whatever reason, my mom decided to send me to a Jewish day school, which had very strict religious observance of every holiday and prayers every morning that we said for an hour. And so my orientation as a child was Orthodox, even though I couldn't invite a lot of friends to my home because my mom didn't separate the dishes and, she wasn't as observant. But I had a very strong amount of training with all these holidays so that when I got older, for a while, I didn't observe much of anything. And then when my husband's father decided he wanted to become a cantor, I started observing them again. It was a return to my childhood in many ways. And I have an older sister who couldn't be with us today, very glamorous older sister, who did not, I think she experienced some very upsetting and traumatic anti-Semitism as a small child. My parents were in an area, I never lived there, but in Bloomington, New Jersey, where there were very few Jews. And she talks about, and I also wrote about this in the book, where, you know, the kids, the local kids were throwing rocks at her and tying her to a tree and saying bad things about her being Jewish.
And how old is your sister? How many years between you?
She's 7 years older than me.
And is there any other siblings in your family?
No, there were apparently children my parents were trying to have that were lost in miscarriage and so on.
So let me ask Dina and Brian about memories of your parents.
Well, as it was said, my father was quite a stern person, you know, so he was, I don't think he related well to children, and he was like a little hard to get to know. But he was always, an upstanding person and honest, and certainly took care of us and my mother. I have a photograph, if you can see.
Nice.
Oh, nice.
This is my father. Very.
And who are the two people on the side?
This is my mother. This is my father, and this is a friend of theirs.
Okay.
He was.
And where are you at that? Do you know where you are at where the photo is taken?
Oh, this was probably taken on a cruise, either at a party or a cruise that they went on. They had a group of friends that they partied with, and they were really party people.
And how old were you during that time, that picture that you were showing, roughly?
I don't know. I was. They look very young. I'm assuming I was, not too far out of toddler, or in my own,
Okay.
garden.
And what about your mother? You said you gave some specifics about your father. What about your feelings towards your mother?
Yeah, well, I certainly was closer to my mother, but it wasn't a like tight relationship, and as I said, they like to party, and that was always sort of fun, having a lot of people in the house. And I have another picture. This is.
If you could come over to get on the mic side. Here we go. Okay, there you go.
This is our aunt, my aunt,
my
Jenna's
mom.
mother.
Oh,
and I think that's Leslie, right?
My older sister, Leslie. Yeah.
nice.
Yeah. And then the last one that I pulled out. I don't know if you could see this because it's kind of dark, but
Yes,
there I am in the center.
Okay, and what's the occasion for this family picture?
Yeah, this is a family picture. I don't know what the occasion was. Obviously the family was getting together for some reason.
And
But
how about
this is
my
my father here, and this is my mother all the way.
And what about you, Brian? What do you remember? What do you remember about your parents as you were growing up?
Oh, what do I remember? Oh. So we grew up in Laurelton, which my father always used to sing the Anatevka tune, Laurelton, because it was such a Jewish neighborhood. But it was really an integrated neighborhood. It was very nice. A lot of synagogues. So of course I attended. Like I said, my father worked a lot. It was on the weekends that we got to see him sometimes, barely. But because he was always doing things on the weekends too. He had to get the stories ready on Sunday. He would get the newspaper articles ready for Tuesday because that's when they went to press. When he became a teacher, he was doing. I have a picture here I would like to show of him as a fortunately, I don't have photographs right now, so I can maybe I can show you this picture here
Uh-huh.
where he is.
Yep. And when do you think that was?
This was,
I can't hear you, Brian. So you
I'm
have to,
sorry, in the late 60s or early 70s.
I got you. Okay.
And so he, so like I said, uh, I was involved in Hebrew school and the youth group, and I enjoyed all of these things. And to me, being Jewish was really something. My older brother, not so much, and my younger brother went to a day school, so he got it. He went to the Jewish day school, and so. But for me, it really stayed with me. It resonated. I enjoyed it. My parents, like I said, my mother was the one who was always home. My father never let her work because he did not want us to be latchkey kids. I would come home and do my homework. My older brother, not so much. He led a very different lifestyle. He very much wanted to do his own thing, and he did. So, and I guess he still is.
And what is
we
it?
haven't
What
spoken-
is your, what is it? Are you close with your siblings?
No, my younger brother, yes, but my older brother and I are estranged. I haven't seen him or his wife in well, probably since my father's funeral, which would be about 8 years ago.
Wow. Okay.
So, but that's for another podcast.
So I wanted to ask, connecting all the dots here, Brian and Dina, did you know, obviously I'm saying more to Brian, did you know Jenna's parents when you married into the family?
Yes.
Yes, I did. And I have to say, about the exceptional things about her parents, and actually a lot of people from that generation, was there were no filters. What you heard was what you got. This was, they were very direct. There was no beating around the bush. There was.
So did they like you when you
Yes,
first
yes.
came into the family? Did you get the stink eyes, or did you get the side eye, or what?
What's not to like,
Everybody
Brian?
was-
Come on, sit down. Yeah, have a knish.
Okay.
Yeah, hey,
I'll
that
ask
was-
the same question, Janet, of you. When you saw their parents, what was the relationships that you had with Dina and parents, as well as Brian's parents? So if you can kind of, we've
Was
been,
Oh, Brian's parents.
yeah,
How did I get along with them?
yeah.
They were wonderful people,
When Brian, when you first brought her, we'll go backwards and understand the stories of how you met. But when you first brought her home for the first time, what was the gems of comments coming?
Well, I can't remember, but I just know that they were very relieved that she's a nice Jewish girl. That was very important, to my parents, and she still is, So
They were just, Brian's mother was the sweetest person. You wouldn't find anybody nicer. And
Right.
she always meant well and hoped for the best for you.
And Jenna, when you met their parents, what were your impressions?
Well, I don't remember meeting Brian's parents. I don't know if
Might not have. You might not have.
Maybe not.
yeah.
They-
I mean,
they used to-
I thought Brian was great right away. It was just, I remember Dina maybe telling me she had met someone. This was just on the QT one time, and just saying, she met someone and he seemed different than a lot of the other people that she had been with or known, and that she thought this might be an important relationship. And I remember thinking, go Dina. And she had said, I think, is this right? Were you in Okinawa?
Yes, we lived there. That was part of Brian's job.
But were
Okay,
you
so-
in Okinawa during courtship at all, or were you
No,
traveling?
After.
married.
All right,
Yes.
let's stop a second. You can't drop the Okinawa stuff first. We need to get a little bit more detail and
Okay.
background of what the Okinawa story is.
So I went to Queens College and I got probably the most important degree anybody could ever get, a bachelor's in drama and theater. Didn't have it, couldn't do a thing with it. So I went to technical school for a year and a half. And then I got a job with a defense contractor out of the South Bronx named L'Oreal Electronics. And there I decided that after a year of doing electronic measurement equipment that I should go. And I had, like I said, I had traveled to Israel as a junior in college. And there was a girl there that I met, a Russian girl. And I thought, how could I get back to see her? Well, I guess I could become a field engineer because L'Oreal had a contract in Israel. And so I applied for and I got the job as field engineer. And they put me on and they sent me everywhere but Israel. So, because I think they thought if I went, I wasn't coming back. So anyway, I was working on the F-15 job and we had to do a retrofit and they sent me to Germany and Okinawa and
And you
all
were
over the
you were
United States.
single at the time, I assume.
No, we had just gotten married.
Oh.
Oh,
Well, how
What a
did you
racket.
get from this girl in
Wants
Israel to
to,
Dina?
well,
Tell boy he wanted to go back there.
well, that was the original plan, was, you know, to try to go back and see her. But then, of course, as life inevitably takes its turns, she got married and moved to Finland. So that was the end of that. And then, but during that time, you know, I had met Dina and I was traveling and I said, I remember proposing to her when I was in Virginia, when we were in Virginia. And she said yes. And it's funny, you know, I won't tell it. I'll tell that story. Somebody told me that she says she got married when she was 30. So this friend was telling the story. And so I did a little calculation in my mind. I said, well, when is Dina turning 30? I said, oh, her birthday's on the 25th of January coming up. I said, let's make the wedding on the 17th, the week before. That way she can still be married when she's 30. I don't know. It was just crazy. But right after that, I got on this contract, this job, and they gave me a second ticket, like a round trip ticket so that I could come home and visit family. So I asked my boss, I said, well, would it be able to like take my wife, you know? And they said, yeah. So we got married and then we went on like a 2.5-year honeymoon, traveling around the world.
It was
Fabulous.
interesting.
What a racket. Oh man. It was
That
great.
sounds really fun.
So Jenna, tell us a little bit of how you met your first husband.
It was one of those crazy things. You know, there's that song, Diana Krall song, one of those crazy things. I had gone to, before I decided to become a playwright and a writer, I was an actor. And I moved to New York and out of, you know, about a year after college. And I went to an audition and I was very nervous because it was a singing audition. I was usually a lot more confident as an actor than a singing actor. And there was a young man there, and he had number 25 and I had number 50. And he walked by, I was sitting with a friend and he knew my friend, Lynn. So they started talking and I thought, I've got to get out of here. I have no business being at this audition. I don't know what I'm doing. Why am I here? So I asked if he would mind giving me his number because I thought, oh, he can sit and talk to Lynn. He's obviously totally at ease here. So he said, let me see what I can do. So he went up to the monitor. I went up with him and he said, I can't give you my number, but could she get in ahead of me? And of course the monitor wouldn't do that. But he did a very good job of talking to the monitor about getting me in. So in any case, I didn't get in, but what he did do was he said, let's warm up a little. So we went into this room where a man was practicing. He talked the man up into leaving his piano and sat down, played the piano, and I warmed up. And then I went and auditioned. Neither one of us, I think, got that part, but he ended up, he asked for my number, which I guess people were doing in those days. I gave it to him. And I thought we would become friends, but, it turned out we became more involved than that. And we moved in together pretty quickly. And then we were both going on auditions. And we ended up being at the Renaissance Fair in New York. This was all in New York. And ended up getting married at the Renaissance Fair in a Renaissance wedding, in Renaissance dress. So actually, my memory may be wrong. I may have been able to get his number, to sneak in his number. And the town I mentioned my sister was in was Bloomfield, not Bloomington. So sorry about that. Circling back.
So you married. So did you bring this gentleman to meet your parents before you got married?
I did. I did.
And their impression?
He was such a people person. They adored him immediately. My sister didn't like him because she said he's doing everything right, and she didn't like him for that reason. But my parents both did. And I remember them hinting to me, because we were just living together, no talk of marriage, that they thought, my mother hinted to me that she thought it would be nice. It would be nicer if I had a real marriage instead of just what I was doing. And I always listened. She used to say, Jenna listens to me very nicely. Then she goes out and she does whatever she feels like doing. But as it happened, one day we were, leaving the fair, and we had talked about it. We talked about, should we wait another year? And he stopped the car, like really stopped it. So I thought we were in an accident. And he said, I don't want to wait. I think we should do this. We should try to do it at the fair. And I thought that was so silly. It was just the kind of thing that I would do, because I don't generally do things super conventionally. So that's how we ended up that way.
And so when you, so I want to ask you, were your parents at the wedding?
They were, and they reluctantly wore Renaissance clothes. My father refused to wear bloomers, but he did have some sort of jacket that looked like he was in the Renaissance. And he said that a woman came to his store a couple of weeks later and she recognized him. And he said he was so embarrassed that she recognized him from that, costume, what he had on. But he did it because he loved me and he wanted
And
to.
so how did,
help me
again,
out.
I know this is, you eventually got divorced, and it's part of the part, and we're going to segue pretty quickly into the book, Crooked Lines, which is you've authored about your life as a single mom. So tell us, how long did the marriage last? Whatever you choose to disclose is your decision. So I'd love to kind of move the discussion into your story, that you authored.
Yes. Well, we were actors for a while. Josh's dad became a cantor at some point. He was a great singer, but it was very tough in New York being actors.
Josh is your husband's name?
No, Josh is my son. I'm sorry.
Okay, so all
We
right.
had a son.
Okay, and so your husband was a cantor or not?
Yes, the husband who was an actor became a cantor.
Okay, tell us a little bit about that interval there, because it's not an easy thing to become a cantor. So.
Right. So we didn't have a child then. It was just, we'd go on tour, we'd do things. It was hard to make a living being an actor. And he decided that he'd always wanted to be a cantor. And he studied privately because usually you have to go to 5-year seminary school.
Mhm.
But he was able to do it because he had such a good voice and a facility for Hebrew. And Brian and Dina have heard him sing and were even brought him to their shul one time to do a job. And he took private lessons, passed the test at the Cantors Assembly. And then we moved to Hammond, Indiana. And he was a cantor at a synagogue there.
Reform cantor, conservative, Orthodox?
Conservative.
Conservative. And were you growing up in a conservative synagogue or?
I
Reform?
did, yeah.
Oh, okay. And for Dina and Brian, conservative, Orthodox, Reform, conservative? Okay,
Conservative, yes.
okay. All right, so continue. So he's now a cantor. You're now
And
you're
then
now in a
he got a
strange place
job.
in Indiana, which is, I think, a very different place for someone who wants to go to New York and be a actor. So I'm wondering what you're thinking about being landlocked in Indiana.
Well, I was lucky in that I met some very extraordinary friends, some wonderful people. Luckily, we were 5 minutes from Chicago and, well, 20 minutes really. And I would go into the city exploring, and I heard about a playwrights group. And I became a member of Chicago Dramatists Guild.
So it was a good move for you.
Actually, probably not Guild, but Chicago Dramatists. And they were amazing. And I got in. I had sent a script to them and they let me in. And so I was able to get very involved with Chicago theater. I had a play produced there by Chicago Dramatists. I met some wonderful friends. I did miss New York very much. So when we got a chance to move to the Twin Cities, which I heard was a great theater town, I was very excited. And I applied for membership at the Playwrights Center.
So how, before you go there, you were still married when you applied to go to, when you went to so which synagogue was your husband singing as a cantor in Twin Cities?
He was at the Temple of Aaron.
Okay. And what year to year are we talking about? So people in the audience who are from Minneapolis who follow me as well, so they understand where we are. And I'm sure we have Temple of, my next door neighbor in Minneapolis was a Temple of Aaron member. So tell me, when were you there?
So got there in 1988.
Okay, and how long have and you're still a Temple Aaron member, I think.
No, I'm not.
Okay.
No, I left during as the divorce
I
happened.
see. And is he still living in the Twin Cities?
He is now. He is not there anymore, but he is in Minneapolis. And he does many different things, singing and
Is he still is he still a cantor, or is he more in musical?
I think he's a part-time cantor, but he's also doing more musicals and
Okay.
things like that.
So tell us a little bit about when you had your son. What is his name? I'm sorry.
His name is Josh.
Josh. Okay.
And he was born in 1989.
Okay.
And he grew up he grew up in synagogue, of course, and being part of a cantor's family and being scrutinized that way. He loved athletics. He liked running and boxing. And I thought he was going to be just a jock. He didn't sing. And then when he was in high school, he got involved.
Which high school was he at?
He went to Roseville middle school, and then Roseville High School.
In St. Paul.
Right.
Okay.
And I think for whatever reason, he started getting interested in oratorio, singing, and opera. And he applied to go to college at Lawrence University in Wisconsin. And in order to do that, he needed singing lessons. So we found a great singing teacher who had originally been from New York. And then he started getting ready for the audition. He was able to get into Lawrence. And I remember there was a recital, and I was sitting next to a Lawrence, the architect of Lawrence U. And his granddaughter, who was 5, was in the recital. So we were trading stories, and I told him my son is trying to get into Lawrence. And so his granddaughter sang, she was really adorable. And then Josh sang later on from Some Enchanted Evening. And this man turned to me and he said, he's going to get in. He's going to get in, and you'll see, you'll be visiting Lawrence. And it was very sweet. And he did get in.
And at this time, are you still married or you're divorced?
No, we were divorced.
Okay. And so it's interesting. I just want another data point. My son was born in 1990 and he's 32. So he's 1 year older. He went to Hopkins High School in Minneapolis. So I don't know was he in BBIO? And I don't know if they have a separate BBIO for Minneapolis versus St. Paul.
Yeah. What is your son's name? I can ask.
Yeah, Mark Geisner.
Okay, I will ask.
With a C. And he currently lives in New York City. And he just got
And
engaged.
Josh does too. Josh
Yeah.
lives in Belmore,
And he
same
lives
town
on
as
the
Dina and
lower.
Brian.
Okay, and he lives on the lower west side, I think.
Okay.
And he just got engaged, so we're very excited.
Oh, congratulations, Mazal tov.
Thank you. So
Well,
I
Josh had to deal with 2 different moms and 2 different dads growing up because his dad remarried when Josh was maybe 3, and my husband and I remarried when Josh was 6. And my husband, I think I told you, is of a different faith, although he is not particularly religious. He's very supportive of what we do Jewishly.
So can I ask?
But it was.
Can I ask you? So you married your second. I'm going to ask you the same question I asked, and we married your first wife. So what did you? Is your parents still living when you married your second time?
Yes.
And so help me with an understanding of when you brought your second husband home. What was their impression? What was their, what were you get support? Did you get some questions? My sister has a marriage for many years to a non-Jewish man. My mother was quite a difficult situation for my mother being a survivor to sort of intake my sister's husband. But it turned out that she loved him like she was her own son. It didn't take very long. So, but I'll ask the question for you. What was your parents like of bringing a second husband and one that wasn't Jewish?
Well, they had practice with my sister because she had many husbands. And I think only one was Jewish. So they had practice. I think, when I met Pete, we met in an adult children meeting for children of alcoholics. And Pete was really an extraordinary person. He still is. And I hadn't expected to find him, and I can talk about that later. And
I wanted to ask you, I just saw list went by. You met him where?
At a meeting for adult children of alcoholics.
Okay, and so tell me a little bit about that background. So his father was a alcoholic?
Well, he came from a background where his parents were, there was more drinking in his household. Mine, there wasn't, but I was told, and I knew that about my grandparents. So there was that in the family. my grandfather. So it was basically a place to talk about how alcoholism can affect the family.
And what was the impetus for you to, and you said you went there on your own without, and that's where you met him. So what was the impetus for you to decide that to go to a group like this? To me, that's an unusual group to go to talk about issues.
Well, I had been very sad when the marriage first broke up to my first husband. And my sister thought going to a meeting, she said, we have this in our house, in our family, and you might, she had been going, and she said, I think that you might get a lot out of it psychologically about why you are who you are if you go. So that was why I decided to go. And the people I met there were very supportive. I had another good friend with alcoholic parents. Some of the most wonderful people I know are alcoholics, for God's sakes.
Mhm.
It's just this disease
So
is
you would,
crippling them.
so the people listening in the audience, you would absolutely recommend someone who is in similar situations to seek out, what is the group called again?
Adult Children of Alcoholics, ACA.
And there probably one in every community, right?
There should be,
Yeah.
because it's related to Alcoholics Anonymous.
I see. Very interesting. I didn't know. So you meet your future husband there, and let's talk about how you brought him back to your parents and what took place there.
Well, I didn't expect to get married. We both ended up at different groups before we dated each other. I need to say that so people don't think we were getting interested in each other while we were in our meeting, because we weren't. But when I I first talked to my mom about Pete, and I said, I met someone who I think is a great person. And she said, her first question was, is he Jewish? And I said, well, no. And she said, okay. And I think she wasn't very happy about that. And then my dad didn't ask me, but they knew that I was still going out with him. And then, a couple of weeks later, I told my dad, I'm on a trip with Pete. We're going on a little trip.
And how old
And
how old were you at this time?
I have to remember, in my 30s.
Okay. So you're certainly
And
old enough to do anything you wouldn't want. at the time.
yes, yeah. And so my dad said, I just want to tell you that no matter what you decide, we want you to be happy. And that includes whether you're with Pete or not. And so, yeah, I remember thinking when my mother first said this to me, Ma, I'm 30-something years old. If I want to go out with someone, I ought to be able to,
So I want to bring in your cousins again, and I want to get a sense of when Jenna brought Pete to the picture. What were you thinking?
I don't think we met him. When did we first meet him?
I don't think you met until my mother's funeral, maybe.
There
Maybe.
wasn't you didn't meet at the marriage?
There wasn't an occasion where we figured that out,
I see.
because I was in Minnesota and
So you
coming out.
did you officially get married?
We did, yeah. Pete
Okay.
and I did, yeah.
Yeah, and they weren't in attendance because of distance, or?
Right. I think that what happened when we got married, we had so little money. So there were like maybe 20 people there.
I see. Okay, so when did the first time you met Pete was when, Dina and Brian?
Maybe at my uncle's funeral, but I can't remember a time before that. Maybe there was, but I can't remember.
There could have been. but
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
So-
probably.
So coming back, you have Josh now in a second marriage, right? And he's got two parents on both sides. So to walk us through a little bit of that, of his growing up, and then I want to kind of have you open the door to your book and to sort of bring us into Crooked Lines, why you wrote it, what was its mission? Was it similar to doing therapy in the group? So let's take it away from here.
It's a lot for Josh growing up. There was a lot going on for him. He, I think like all children of divorce, it was hard for him. He loved both of us, and here we were moving to different houses, and
Did you have
I
full
think-
custody of him?
we shared.
Shared custody, okay.
And he loved his dad's wife. They had other children, a brother and a sister, twins. So he was excited about that. He had much more where his dad was the cantor, and I think people made a fuss over him at the other synagogue. At our house, I brought him to synagogue, but he almost always wanted to be at his dad's. It wasn't as exciting over by our place. He wasn't the center of attention over there. And then, but Pete and I had a lot of fun. In fact, when we got married, I made him promise that we would always have fun, and he did. And we went to museums, we went to movies, we went on to pumpkin patches and apple orchards.
And the big
we
yellow door?
played-
Did you go to the big yellow door?
The what?
The big yellow door, the big yellow, that's in Shakopee, outside of Shakopee.
We
It's-
didn't.
It's a big candy store.
Oh, okay.
So, okay, sorry.
We did, but we did all kinds of fun things. And Pete and Josh got along really well. We brought him to the Badlands and to South Dakota. We did have a December dilemma because Pete's family celebrates Christmas every year. And I didn't know what to do, and I write about it in the book, I didn't really want a tree. But I didn't want to say no to him. He didn't say no to me about whatever I wanted. And then I thought about it, and I got to the point where we talked about it, and he said, I go to the cabin every year because his parents owned a cabin in 2 harbors north of Duluth. And we celebrated, 4th of July there and things like that. So when he said that, he said, why don't we have the tree up there? And then it's not here. And we'll tell Josh that my parents are celebrating. And so that's what we did. We went up there and they had a tree. And I told Josh, this is their holiday. And they are sharing it with us. And, I think it worked out because he grew up to become a cantor.
Well, that's terrific. So tell me a little bit of why he chose to become a cantor.
I think that he had listened to his dad. He had watched his dad all his life. I think that it had begun to hold some magic for him. When he was in college, he thought about being just an opera singer, not just an opera singer, but an operatic singer. He did well. He went to Italy for a summer and sang there. But as he got closer to graduation, he started saying, being in opera is really tough. And I'm thinking about applying to cantorial school. And I thought, oh my God, cantorial school is so expensive and it's 5 years long and we are never going to be able to do this. And of course, when I said, well, it's expensive, he immediately wanted to do it even more. So, because he had had so many obstacles, that no matter, whenever I would tell him about an obstacle, it would just make him want to do it more. And his stepmother, Carol, bless her soul, passed away when he was 12 from cancer. And I think that had a very sad effect on Josh. He loved her very much. He watched a lot of suffering. And that also made him want to help people, in that profession. And my dad passed away before Josh could go, while he was in college. And that enabled us to help him with the cost. He had some loans, but we were able to help. But I think the combination of growing up in a synagogue atmosphere, having his stepmother pass away, and loving singing and performing combined, so that he wanted to become a cantor. And I'm going to let Brian, can I let Brian and Dina tell the story of his first audition? And
Well, first of all, we want to connect the dots. So where is he? Where is the synagogue?
so
The
the
synagogue-
synagogue, his first job is in Belmore, New York.
Okay.
And
And that's on the island, right?
Yeah, that's where we
Yes.
live.
Okay. And what's
Congregation Beit Or.
and is what again, a conservative?
Conservative, yes.
Okay, so go ahead,
So-
Brian, tell the story.
So, and
Yeah.
I didn't know. He just said, I'm going to Belmore. And I said, Dina and Brian are there. Oh my God. And he said, I'm going on an audition. So I called them and I said, can you just make sure that, he doesn't fall off the podium or something?
Yeah, he was very well received. And the congregation didn't have enough good things.
How many
Yeah.
family units is the congregation?
It's big because it's the result of 2 mergers. So it's probably got 600 families. So it's big. And he came to do the audition. And I have to say that for a kid who went through this childhood that Jenna just described, he was the most together human being I had ever met in my life. And he gave an audition. My biggest regret is that I didn't record this thing because she didn't get a chance to see it. But he was able to answer every question, and the questions went from your background, where you grew up, sports, being Jewish. Somebody asked him, what made you become a cantor? He says, well, it was a lot of things. He says, one day I decided I wanted to do it. So I went to my father, and my father said, you want to become a cantor? You know what that means? You're going to have to work for Jewish people. And I'm looking at this and I'm saying, he said this. This is great. He really knows how to talk to an audience. So he's a phenomenal singer. He inherited a great set of pipes, and he's a really spiritual person, but he's a very human person. He's a great teacher. He taught me to read Torah. I'm telling you, this guy he's the real deal. We're so happy to have him in the neighborhood.
And does he come over for dinners?
He used to. We had a little pandemic in between, so that kind of messed things up. So
Yeah.
he's so close, and yet so far.
Sounds
So,
like you have a good voice as well.
No, just faking it. So anyway,
No, you do.
All right, I
Yes.
want to just let you know we finished up our second episode on
Oh.
time, so we're going to come back for our third episode. You're listening to the Obligations of Memory podcast network. I'm Jeffrey Geisner for the Jewish Holocaust Group, and we are speaking with Jenna Zark, who has written a terrific book called Crooked Lines. She's going to tell us much more in the next episode. And her cousins, Dina and Brian, are with us sharing memories. So come on back. We'll be right back.